Everybody has a story, and every story needs to be heard. On this podcast, we are talking with each member of the General Conference Leadership Council. I'm your host, Alyssa Truman, and this is ANN Profiles. Today, I have with me Orathai Chureson. She is the Director for Children's Ministries here at the General Conference. Welcome, Orathai. I'm so glad that you are able to be here with us today.
Thank you.
Now, did I say your name correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
So I was very scared that I was going to mess it up. Now, what country are you from?
I'm from Thailand.
Thailand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is a Thai name.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we talked about this a little bit before, but you have just recently come here to America in the last year?
Yes.
Right?
November
of last year. So it's been almost a year.
Yep.
And one thing that we talked about before we started this podcast was that Americans, some of the things that you're having to acclimate to is that Americans speak very fast.
That's right.
And I have been told that I speak fast many times. So I'm going to try to slow down just a little bit for you
Thank
today.
you. Appreciate that.
What are some other things, before we get into your life story, what are some other things that you have found when you took the call to work for the Adventist Church headquarters here at the General Conference that you found to be some challenges as you've started to adapt to this new culture?
Yes, a lot of things has been, a challenge for me, especially the weather.
What's the difference between the
prepared.
weather?
Well, you are talking about, Asia, mostly, warm and rainy and hot. And so over here, the weather is totally different. So I have to adjust my wardrobe. I have to change the way I dress. And yes, so many ways, including, finding a moisturizer that fit my skin. So there's a lot of adjustment. But of course, I think everywhere we go, there are certain adjustment that has to be made.
I don't think I would have thought about the fact that people coming from another country would have to find new moisturizers. But it's accurate because it's very different weather here than I was just over in Korea, Jeju Island. And you're right, the weather is completely different. And I think Thailand is quite a bit further south from Jeju. So it's
Southeast Asia.
Yeah. Okay, so you are from Thailand. Were you born in Thailand?
Yes, I was born in Thailand.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about your parents and where you were born.
I was born in Thailand in the Kanchanaburi city. It's a well-known city for Second World War because it's where the bridge was constructed and there were many prisoners of war who died there. So there were wonderful stories. I grew up learning and listening to wonderful stories. How war has been such a destructive move of people, but at the same time, we also heard wonderful story how blessing comes as a result of those, afflictions and hardships that the people face. There were love stories. There were, people who were kind to the prisoner of wars, and there are a lot of prisoner of war coming and returning to that place and, helping the locals because they wanted to repay the favor that they had received before. And so it's a beauty of human being that I was growing up with, even though it was something that people do not really want to have it happen before. And yes, I grew up as a Buddhist. My parents have been the strict Buddhist believer. And so going to the temple was part of my life. And we have been taught to obey and see everything that we do. There will be consequences. And we have to be the one who take care of our own salvation. And that's it.
No, you're the first person I've interviewed that has come from a faith other than Christianity. So we've had a lot of our fellow GC coworkers that, they've come from other Christian faiths, but you're outside of that. So let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about Buddhism. Because there's a lot of good things about Buddhism. We don't want to make it sound like it's, something, whatever, but it is different. obviously. So what would you say when you understand, looking back now, what would you say were some of the things that were good about Buddhism, but through a Christian lens you see slightly differently?
Yeah. What Christians do not know or probably have very little ideas is that Buddhism emphasizes a lot of expression of the fruit of the Spirit. We talk about, tolerance, self-control. We talk about obedience and, many other aspects of fruit of the Spirit. And so when I made the transition, it was not difficult. The only challenge that I faced was to believe that Jesus died for me and that I would attain salvation by his redemptive act. So that was a huge struggle for me. But making a transition from Buddhism to, Christianity, in other aspect, it was quite smooth.
Yeah. So how do Buddhists believe you earned salvation, or how do you obtain salvation?
By salvation by work, your own effort. When you talk about Christians' salvation, it's somebody, which is Christ, who has done a greatest favor for you, for your salvation. But for Buddhism, you are the one who is going to earn it. So whatever you do, there'll be some consequences, cause and effect. So what you do now will determine your future, or even your afterlife. So the concept of sin in Buddhism, sometimes I feel is much more emphasized than in Christianity, because sins that we commit within this life can be carried on for many cycle of rebirth. In the cycle of rebirth.
Because we believe in reincarnation?
Yes, that's true. And so the Buddhists really were very careful about what they do. I mean, I'm talking about a very strict, Buddhist believers. They would be very careful on what they do. They make merit a lot so that they had no idea in the past life what they had done wrong. So in order to redeem, and be free from the bondage of sins, they have to start making a difference by doing something good in this life to ensure their salvation for next life. And salvation is about being born as human again, in a good life, in a desirable condition of life, or maybe reaching nirvana, which is to end the cycle of rebirth and be blissful, peaceful, no existence of life, but in a blissful state where everything is just, completely silence. So Buddhism consider enlightenment of a state of nirvana by the founder of Buddhism, Buddha, as something that is the highest. And I would consider it as living eternally with God in heaven, where there's no strife, there's no, sins that could enter and destroy the person, and there would be no consequences of sin. So it was the most, to me at that time, it was the most desirable state where we would be free from sins. But
so I've not talked with many people who have a Buddhist background. So I appreciate just learning a little bit more about it. So your parents were both devout Buddhists?
Very much.
Okay. So you were born into this family. How does that figure into your childhood?
You mean how
does your family's background as Buddhists, how does the culture that you're in, how does that impact your childhood?
Oh, okay. Yes, thank you. Actually, it has impacted me a lot. Probably even the way my mannerism, I believe, my way of speaking to people, even my way of probably walking, we bend, sometimes probably in the Western world, that is not the way to be walking confidently. But when you bend, you show respect to people. And so that is still part of me that I think there's a beauty in maintaining it, especially when you have, respect to people and you express it in a visible way. That Buddhist community, but in Buddhist culture, seniority is very important. You talk about people who are older. You don't call them by name. You address them as, kinship, in kinship, relative, uncle, aunt, older sister, older brother, or even grandpa and grandma. So I see it as something that, to me, because I grew up in that culture, is a beautiful thing, because you are not just, taking everyone as your friend, but you are taking everyone as your relative, someone much closer than just a friend. And so when we talk about God, I don't really see him as my friend much, but I see him as my Father, my Heavenly Father. And that's, how Buddhism has a great part in me that influenced the way I even perceive Christianity.
So, in your early years then, when did your family convert to Christianity, or was it just you?
It's just me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which stage of your life did this happen in?
Actually, I was very devout Buddhist, believer. Just to give you a little bit preamble on this journey, because I was sent to boys' schools, and the reason was that was a Buddhist school where we sit with some, novice, those who are monk, but they are still in their childhood years, but they have into monkhood. And so my classmates were some of them. And in that school, actually, they accept very few girls. Only certain, individuals who have certain skill or very good in academic, achievement. So I was able to be selected and be there until my grade 12. So with that, I grew up in a very traditional setting. And so during my school, I have seen people coming, and sometimes, one thing about Buddhist believers is that they don't confront people, even though they were not happy. Like, you will see missionary coming to school, even though they're Buddhist school, they're very daring, coming to Buddhist school and distribute, religious materials and some flyers. And one day, there was a group of people coming, pastors, and two pastors and one lay member from Adventist Church came to the school and hand over the flyer. And there was a voice of prophecy lessons, and an address to mailing address. And so I was the class president at that time. So I kind of have a certain authority. And so I saw my friends, they got the materials from the pastors. Yeah. At that time, I didn't know that they were pastors. I thought they were just, people coming to share faith. And so they just pick up and threw it in the bin, even without looking at it. And so in front of them, so I felt so bad about it. So I told the other friends that, please take it and take it along with you and throw it at home. Don't throw it in front of them. They came over here just, to share their faith. And so my friend did just that. Quite a number of them picked them and just, kept in their bag and then took it home. And I was one of them. I was also helping, distributing. I picked from them and then I distribute to my friend to make sure.
So you were distributing
yes.
the leaflets for the Christians
yes.
to your Buddhist friends.
Yeah.
Because you wanted to show respect.
And I felt so sorry, that they were not being respectful, like showing they were distasteful with what was, given to them. And so that was the beginning, because later I found the address, and then I was curious about, health, healthful living, and the information about spirit of prophecy. So I just enrolled, and I started, mailing the lessons and expressing my intent to study them, and they mailed the lessons to me, and then I started learning.
So I want to explore this a little bit, because it's very hard. It's easy for us to, I use easy, figuratively here, but like it's easy for us to maybe show a Christian that Adventism makes sense, because they already believe the Bible. So
True.
it's a very easy thing. Now, Buddhists have a holy text too. What is it called?
It's not for commoner to be reading. We have to have a second-hand reading. So we have never touched. In Thai, it's called Prat Trai Pidok, the book, the holy book.
Okay.
And but we do have 5 commandments for commoners.
Okay.
So do not kill is the first one.
Well,
yeah,
I think we would agree with that one. So see, we have some stuff in agreement. But it's intriguing to me that you're trying to be respectful to them, but now you have this thing. What was it that was on there that intrigued you enough to look at something that's completely out of your faith?
Yeah.
Because it's a very, Christianity versus Buddhism, it's different. It's not just one Christian faith to another Christian faith.
Yeah, I have come to learn after a few lessons that, and to appreciate the efforts of people sharing, help messages. At the same time, also their faith in the second coming. But I didn't really believe it, because it was just out of my curiosity. At that time, my mindset was like all religion would be good. Whatever you do, if you don't, bother people, you don't hurt others, you try to be kind, you try to be loving, that's good enough for me. And that was my point of view. So it was not really until something has come to my attention, and I was able to receive a Bible. Yes, and that was the turning point for me.
So you received a Bible. I'm guessing like you'd finished some lessons or something. Yep. You get a Bible.
Yes.
So you just previously said you couldn't actually touch the book or read it yourself within Buddhism. Right. So now you're actually being given to read for yourself what we would have considered our holy book, what the Adventists and Christianity would consider. What was that like to open it up and just to be able to read through that on your own?
I have to admit that I started reading, but I had no idea what I was reading. At the very beginning, I started with Genesis and talking about creation. I came from science, background and evolution with a belief and understanding. So it was totally off. And then as I read further, I came to conclude that God was so fierce. He was very mean, very cruel. And how could he require an innocent lamb to be slaughtered, to be killed in the place of someone's sin? That didn't make sense. So I stopped reading. And but after a few months, I one pastor, I came to know a pastor, and he asked me, how was your Bible reading? And I said, well, it didn't make sense to me. Anything could make up a story. These are the compilation of the story. I was not able to read, throughout. I just stopped just into a few books in the Old Testament, and I had to stop because it was too much for me to handle. from Buddhist perspective. And then after that, he said one thing to me. Have you prayed before you read? I said, no, I never knew how to pray. Nobody really, guided me. It was my personal journey at the very beginning of this,
So you're trying to figure everything out for yourself, really?
Yes, because where I was stationed at that point in time, there was no Seventh-day Adventist Church in the whole town. And
so these pastors, where were they visiting from?
From Bangkok. So occasionally they came to visit. At that time, there were very few, but there were some believers who are actually living along the border, Thailand, Myanmar border. But they were focusing on that area because of the number of membership there, but not in a Thai, soil, in a Thai area where very few Christians. So not to mention Seventh-day Adventists. I was the first one in that, province to be converted as a Thai national. Yeah.
Wow. So did they help you learn how to pray?
And then the pastor said, yes, you have to pray. You pray and you ask God to help you, to guide your mind and ask him to help you. And so I thought about it. So in the evening, I came back and I, carry my Bible. I look at the Bible and then I pray with my open eyes. I said, God, if you're really there, if you are real, please help me to understand the Bible that I'm reading, to know what is inside that is meaningful for me, that I should believe and I should take it to my, spiritual level. And so after I pray, I just flipped the Bible. And it led to me to the book of Luke, chapter 3. This about the paralyzed man who, was taken by friends to meet Jesus. And I was reading, just like any other, time that I was reading. Nothing much has, come into my mind until when the text said they lowered Jesus from the roof, trying for him, to meet Jesus, the sick, paralyzed man, helpless man. And then the text says he met Jesus. And at that point in time, suddenly something just hit me very hard. Then I started to choke. It became so overpowering that I was not able to control. I started to choke out tears and I cry, and I didn't understand at the very beginning why I was crying. I was crying for almost 30 minutes, until I was so tired. Then at the end, I realized God was actually trying to humble me. That my status, my condition was just like a paralyzed man, helpless. But people were praying for me, trying to lead me to Jesus and help me to experience him personally. And that was the turning point. I realized that, I was sick. I need healing. Even though I was not really doing something that, considered as sinful or hurting other people, but I still need God because there's something in me that I need to depend on him to overcome. So it was a turning point where I was humble. And if I have to say, at that point in time, I would really I believe strongly that it was the Holy Spirit who was speaking to me, that helped me to change from my mindset, from a Buddhist mindset to a Christian mindset, where you have to depend on someone else to save you, that you can't save yourself. And that is God alone.
What was that like, realizing that although our works matter, okay, they're not what save you. That as much as you tried, it was never going to help you reach the next stage and the next stage until you reached nirvana. What was it like when you realized that Christ was enough?
Well, at that point when he, when I started, after almost 30 minutes of, choking up my tears, I began to realize how much I needed God and how much I have to depend on Him for my own salvation, to be free, to be truly free. You can't undo your sins by yourself. Things that happened without God, it will be, your destiny. And so I believe that God can change my destiny. And, it was a turning point where I began to think of myself as a child of God. And that, I was growing up. One thing that I failed to mention, my dad, he wanted a boy so bad because, only a boy can become a monk. And that is the shortest route for any parents to be taken to heaven, to be saved, because their son became a monk. So I wasn't, I was like, that's why one of the reasons my dad wanted me to be very strong, like a man, like a boy at that point in time. So send me to boys' school everywhere. And yes, and that point in time, I said, wow, you don't need to really to struggle so hard. You don't need to pretend that you're strong like a boy. You don't need to, be class president to impress other people and work your heart out to be accepted. But, God accepts us the way we are. So that way, when I try to understand that God is also our Heavenly Father, it makes sense. It makes sense, because sometimes even in your life, there is no perfection. My parents are wonderful parents, very loving, very caring, and are good providers. But at the same time, there is a missing, gap, that I was not born a boy, because He placed so much hope in the second born, and they have only 2 girls. So I was born.
My dad got stuck with 3 daughters.
3 daughters.
I understand.
Yeah. So it was kind of disappointment, but I tried to live up to His expectation a lot. And so when I found God, I said, well, this is, it's such a wonderful relationship. It's a higher level of relationship where there is no need of all those expectations or wanting to live out someone else who you are not, to please others. But God is so willing to come down to your level and fulfill your emotional voice, your emotional needs, and everything that you have. So experience, He understands you perfectly. So that is really a personal touch that, of course, in sequence, it is also spiritual touch for me. Yeah.
So, well, we know that God accepts us. How did your parents accept their daughter becoming a Christian?
Yeah, it wasn't easy, because when I decided to be baptized, at that time I was in grade 12. I didn't inform my parents. I just did it. And my mother came to know. And my mother and, we were so close. She said one word after she found out that I didn't love her. And so it was so painful, to hear from your parents that you don't love me. Because for Buddhist children, obedience is very important. You can disgrace your parent by being disobedient. You can, show your disrespect by not listening to them. And so it was painful when my mom said, I don't love her. But in my mind, I was saying to her that I'm going to love you, a lot more. That one day you are going to appreciate not only me, but my God, who has actually made me the way, I am now. And so that's what I vowed to do. My mom and my dad, it took quite some time. But later they appreciate and they realize that, they respect the God that I believe in. So whenever we travel, they say, don't forget to pray to your God, And there were some testimonies during our life, after we got married, things came and they realized that God is leading us. Yeah.
Now, because you alluded to the fact that you got married. So I know that somewhere in your college years, you meet a very handsome man. What is handsome man's name?
Pastor Saw Samuel.
Saw Samuel. So you meet Saw. I guess in my mind I thought it was Samuel Saw, but you're right.
You can call Pastor Sam because okay. Saw is not actually his first name. It's a clan's, identification.
Okay.
So just say Pastor Samuel is fine.
Pastor Samuel. Okay. So you meet Pastor Samuel.
Yes.
Now you go to college. What are you going to college for?
Yes. From the time that I started believing in God, I was in grade 12. And I found a lot of challenges. I decided not to go to temple. And so when we have family reunion and worship, they would all go to the temple and make merit for the dead, the ancestors. I went with them, but I was just hanging around in the temples or in the campus, And people look at me as a deviant, as a disobedient child, and it was not a good feeling, to go through that when the whole society is looking at you. Why you're not worshiping and not doing what your parents are doing? And so I decided to tell my parents, I want to study in India. At that point in time, my English was so limited. I was still struggling so hard in English subject. I to be honest, I hated English subject.
And here you are doing an interview in English.
Yeah, that is by God's grace. Yeah.
Amen.
So, but at that point in time, I just wanted to extract myself from the pressure, after baptism. That's why it's really something that most people, it's a period, it's a transition period where most people might fail to maintain their new faith when the society and the community go against them, especially their family members, So I said to my mom and dad, I said, I wanted to study in India, and it's much cheaper than Thailand. But my parents were very, loving and caring, and they said, okay, you can go. So I went to study in India, not knowing English. So I knew only yes and no. And so
that should make classes very interesting.
So I almost passed placement test in college. So I had to go down and study English 51 and 61, which is a basic English for +2 students, or grade 11 and 12, spoken English and, basic English. And that place was actually a wonderful place to learn English, because everyone come with very limited knowledge of English, and all of us try to speak, and there's no reservation whether it's correct or wrongly pronounced. We were not really careful. All of our guard is down because we all wanted to learn English. And so I pray a lot. So when I failed in English placement test, I said, I'm going to take English major. And then at that time, I also wanted to learn more about God. So I take also religious philosophy. So it's a two, field that is really a big challenge for me. And then, I was able to make it by God's grace. The first test was 0. I just wrote, I am sorry, I don't know English. Just that. And so the teacher was wondering, who is this person? Because I was sitting right in front of her, every class trying to understand, But I was not able to get even a single point during my first test. But after that, I learned how the questions were formed. So I studied and I was able to pass in the other test that come after. So praise God for everything.
Now, were you at a Adventist school or just a Christian school?
Actually, it's a Spicer College, Memorial College.
Okay.
Yeah, now Spicer Adventist University. So that place and a lot of teachers, I have a wonderful memories. It's such a wonderful thing to learn in a Seventh-day Adventist institution with the work at. I was able to pay, my parents send me enough money to pay for my school fees. But because of the work education, I went to the farm and I work just like others who didn't have, school fees to money to pay for the school fees. I work just like them, and I enjoyed a lot. And I was able to get free vegetable at the end also.
What's your favorite vegetable?
Everything, actually.
Everything?
Everything, yeah. So it's a wonderful time. Yet during that time, friends are really important. I have to give credit to my friends, close friends. She's not Seventh-day Adventist, she's Baptist. But she's such a wonderful friend who is just like, Seventh-day Adventist. She accepts the truth, only that she has not been able to be baptized. But we still communicate, and she keeps teaching me English. And we had a wonderful time because I saw one thing that my experience in India at Spicer Memorial College is that, everything our professor would teach us, like even do not waste food, because there are a lot of people, they're suffering. Even the cafeteria food, you have to know that there are people who are still, hungry while your plate is full. So with that mindset, I would never, thought about it much, because in Thailand, my mother has a big paddy field. And sometimes we just throw rice. It's a lot of rice, a lot of, food. But once I went there, everything is precious, and everything, we utilize it with great concern for other people. Yeah.
The Adventist Church has invested a lot in creating a beautiful educational system. What would you say was one of the biggest takeaways you had from your time at Spicer?
The biggest thing would be faith, stronger faith. I have to admit that in my journey, I can never make it alone, because there are a lot of people in the school. They are like missionaries in classroom, teachers, or even friends. Of course, there are some challenges, but I take all those challenges as something that helped me to grow and to understand things around me better. And these things are so valuable. I mean, these people are so valuable. The faith that they share, of course, there are some incidents that also is kind of like containing humor in it. But I appreciate enough, from the spiritual sense, I have to say. Because I remember one time we went to prayer meeting, and there was a lady. She is so much into faith, always wanting to show that she really believes in God, and her faith, she wanted, I believe, wanting to inspire other people. And so we had a pray session after a short devotional, and she was telling, look at this cup. God listened to me. I can pray to him and he will perform miracles. This cup is going to move from one end to the other end once I pray. Believe me, she was saying. And so all of us were praying, and we kind of like, well, okay. We listened, and she was praying so intensely. God, please hear me. Please move this cup from this end to the other end. Now, out of curiosity, and with my friend, we were like doing, so we opened our eyes to see, and we saw her using her hands, moving the cup from one end to the other, And after that, once everyone opened, I said, wow, that's, everyone was, whoa, wow.
She never said how it was going to be moved.
That's true. But one thing I learned is that sometimes we want to, force God to answer to our prayer. And sometimes our prayer is nonsense and so selfish, self-centered. God cannot answer such prayer. I believe he will answer the prayer that will help uplift people, will help his people who are desperate and who need, him to answer at the particular moment. So that is what I take away from that prayer session. So, but it has been such a joy to, think about everything that I learned and I experienced, and I grew up in Seventh-day Adventist education, and I will be forever thankful.
Now, you met your husband, and you gave me a little bit of it sounds like you guys dated for a while.
Yes, 9.5 years.
9.5 years. And I asked how you had gotten engaged, and you said it really wasn't an engagement. So tell us a little bit about the story of how you ended up with Pastor Samuel.
Yeah, actually my husband is from Myanmar.
Okay.
And I'm from Thailand. And so we knew each other. I knew him as a pastor since I was in Thailand. And so after that, when we were in college and we started communicating, and so we had been dating for 9.5 years, and suddenly after I graduated with my master, and then
your master's in what?
In secondary education.
Okay.
Yeah. So he gave me an ultimatum because it has been like 9.5 years. And he was saying, I waited for you for 9.5 years. And I'm growing old. He's 7 years older than me. I'm growing old, so we need to get married this year. That is 1998. I was working in the school as a teacher.
Now, was he a pastor at this point?
Yeah, he was a chaplain in the language school in Thailand at that time. So he said, this year, or I'm going to change my focus. And then I was like, wow, I wanted to, work for some time and wanted to help, Asian children, they want to repay their parents. Yeah. And so I said, can we wait for another? And he said, no, this is it. And he was serious. He was very serious. And so what happened? I said, okay. So I decided to get married. And guess what? The day that we got married was the last day of 1998. That's how much I could prolong.
You're like, I'm going to go as
31st,
long as I can.
Yeah, 31st of December, 1998.
Well, I will remember your anniversary now.
But it is not a good, a good choice because I realized instead of having many gifts, you only get one gift. You don't get for anniversary. You don't get for separately for Christmas. You don't get for New Year. You only get one gift. Just one gift. And that is the side of it.
Well, that's not good. You should just remind him that you need at least 3. At least 3.
Yeah.
Unless it's one big one. If it's one big one, then it can work.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. Thank you for suggesting that.
So a couple of times we've made weird life transitions. So like we've moved or something like that right around like our anniversary or my birthday. So we buy a house or something like that. I'm like, thank you. At some point the gifts like, we moved, we got a car one year, and then another year we got like a house around my birthday. And I was like, they're just getting bigger. Wow. So I'm wondering what comes next.
Wow.
It hasn't gotten bigger, but I think the house was going to be as big as it's going to be. All right. So you get married. Where do you guys move to and start your married life in?
In Thailand, actually. I was teaching in school in Bangkok itself. It's our mission school, and he was working as a chaplain of the teachers and then chaplain of Adventist language school in Bangkok. And then after that, he was called to serve in the hospital, which is the oldest church, Seventh-day Adventist Church in Thailand.
What is the name of this hospital?
Adventist Hospital Church in Thailand.
Okay.
Yeah, Bangkok Adventist Hospital Church. Yeah, that is the church, and that is the area where a lot of bombing during Second World War, but God protected that place. Yeah, so that's the place. So yeah, we began our service, but it was so it's kind of really very fast track, I can say. He served for the church just for 1.5 years. Then he was called to be the mission secretary.
Okay.
Yes, so it's like within few years we moved 5 times, following
what
him.
are you doing during this time?
I was teachers. I travel, and I also support him in the ministry because he's...
In what ways?
I work alongside. I remember assisting. We went to the church the first time we were called to that hospital church, and we didn't realize what we would be, meeting, because later on only we heard that people were not happy that a Burmese pastor is coming to pastor that church because they wanted, in the past only foreigner, Americans, or, those who are very English-speaking country coming to serve there, or Thai pastors. And so...
Are the relationships, you said Burmese.
Yeah.
Burma is now Myanmar.
Yeah, Myanmar.
Are the relationships between Thailand and them good?
Actually, at that time, during the time I was growing up, there's some kind of prejudice, I have to say, to be frank, because of the historical events in the past. Myanmar was so powerful that they destroyed many kingdoms of Thailand. Sukhothai, Ayutthaya, Nonburi, and so Myanmar was really powerful at that time. So many capital city of Thailand were destroyed, and so that didn't, sound very good with even the new generations, because they felt like a kind of discrimination. And also we can feel the pressure as well as a Thai, because we also did the same thing to Cambodia, to Laos. Then so history, sometimes people just cannot get over with things that happened in the past, and that's why that is, I think, one of the reasons. And Thailand is also a hub for many foreign workers coming illegally to Thailand because of the situation around Thailand. The countries, they kind of dependent on their survival from the work overseas in Thailand, and that's why Myanmar is also facing citizens are facing such that. But I am thankful that now that if people are more open, more accepting. But at that point, it was a little bit challenge for him to serve. But so when we went to the church, we moved our things inside. Nobody came to welcome us. We just went there. But so I was like, I wanted him to be certain and feel. So I think at that time, both of us, we depend on each other in our ministry a lot, especially emotionally, and to gain confidence and be positive about the call that we have received. And yes, as a pastor's wife, you know how things are. You want, everyone want a pastor's wife who can play piano, who are good in baking, who
want to take care of the children.
Sing, who can sing well. I'm none of those. So, but what I did, I was helping him with English, translation. That was the area, and also reaching the Buddhist community in the church. And so at the end, when we left, the church was like, they were so sad that we were leaving. And many of them continued to be our close friend in the close circle, even until we left the church, like, almost 30 years ago. But
wow.
They continue to be our prayer warriors. And some of them have become our parents, adopted parents and aunties and uncles, how things are.
So he moves to executive secretary. From there, what position, how do you enter children's ministries?
Okay. I was a teacher, as soon as I graduated with my master's degrees, I started teaching, and I enjoyed teaching a lot. I enjoy the excitement of the kids when you tell story and then you hold it for the next day, and they say, please say, okay, come next time. If you behave, I'm going to tell you the remaining of the stories. So that is the time that I really enjoy classroom teaching. And I started also with children ministry by translation, translating children's stories for the Sabbath school. In
translating.
Thailand. Translating the materials. And yes, slowly it's gotten into, the ministry. And but later, when I moved to Singapore and to the Philippines, I paused.
What were you doing in Singapore?
Singapore, I was actually not working for 1 year because my son was just like 3 years old. So then after that, I began working part-time, just office assisting.
Which offices were you guys
business
at
office, clerk, and also inventory I was working on.
Okay, so in a school system?
No, not school system. Now it's a union.
Okay, so you're at the
Southeast Asia Union.
Southeast Asia Union. Okay. And so from Southeast Asia Union, where do you guys go from there?
From there, we got a call after, I think, 1.5 years again. My husband got a call to go to the division as a secretary of the division. So
and the division headquarters
in the Philippines.
Are in the Philippines.
Yeah. So we moved from Singapore to the Philippines. And over there, the job that landed on my lap was working in a library, librarian. I enjoyed for some time reading, but very few people visited the library. Sometimes 2 people, 3 people, or a group of children came by. And I was feeling so bored because I wanted interaction. I wanted to, share. And so I decided I should study. So that's how I continue my study in IS in the Philippines. Yeah.
And what did you study while you were at IS?
I was doing, again, curriculum and instruction, education. And yeah, that is the field.
So while you were at the division office, Southern Asia Pacific Division,
yes.
So while you were there in the Philippines, did you become children's ministries there? Did you serve in some capacity within children's ministries?
Yeah, teaching is always part of me because I also taught Sabbath school here and there when I was assigned to. I was not fully involved at that time because I was, studying, and also the kids were still small. But later, when I got a call to serve as a children ministry director at the division in 2015 in San Antonio, GC session, I was still doubtful whether I could do it because my kids were so small. My son at that time, he was in grade 4, and my daughter was in grade 6. And it required lots of traveling within, 14 countries, which is the territory of Southern Asia Pacific Division. So I was really doubtful. But many people encouraged, and they said, no, you can do it. It's teaching, you have been teaching children. But I said, how about traveling? So I talked to my husband. I said, I don't think this is the right call for me. Because if I'm to be children ministry director, I have to minister to my kids. And our son in grade 4, he was still struggling with mirror image, D and B.
Yeah.
Yeah, those things. Yes.
Opposite.
And 9 and 6. So I was like, I don't think this is really something that I should really, take up, and I won't be able to do it. And my husband said, God has called you, and he knows, he guided in this process. Do this, he said. If it's going to affect our kids, by the end of 2015, you can resign. If our son, suffer and our daughter couldn't take it. Because my husband also travels so much, and I travel a lot. So I decided, okay, I pray just like I had never prayed before for my children. Before I left, sometime at 3-4 a.m. in the morning to go to the airport, they were still sleeping. I said, God, you have to help take care of them. Oh, by the way, we got somebody who actually could care for them. So we believe that person was, the one that God sent as well, because we had interviewed so many people, and it's not just the right person to my perception. So I talked to my husband. I don't know why there is a face. that kept coming to me. And she was a student that I used to teach in IS, in the English Center. I didn't even recall her name at that time. So one day we went to IS campus. Then we met her. She was walking. And I said, hey, would you like to come and live with us? You don't need to pay for anything. And since you're a student, and we will even provide you the transportation, fees and everything. And you can teach our kids also piano. And we'll pay for you for the lessons. Stay for free, eat for free, just to be with our kids, accompany them. And she said, yes, immediately. And she said, you are the answer to my prayer. I said, what? And she said, you know what? I was leaving at the end of this month. I was planning to leave at the end of this month because there was no sponsorship coming. And she couldn't, continue to study without the sponsor, financial aids, because it was expensive. She's from Myanmar. Myanmar is, struggling country. So she said, your answer to my prayer. And I said, wow, God put people together. I need her and she need us, to care for the kids. And it has been such a wonderful experience for the kid as well. She's firm. When she said no gadget, she really,
she meant it.
Yeah, she meant it. Yeah.
When our church has election processes, one of the things we want younger people. We want younger women as well. But we sometimes don't think about the cost to families. The struggle you had to go through to accept this calling, because ultimately you also know that you're accountable to your family, not just the children of the territory, but your two children.
Yes.
And how do you, for other women in particular, who may be struggling with that same thing, the feeling that there's this deep sense of calling that God has for them, but struggling with that whole parental aspect and the traveling and stuff, what advice would you give them?
Okay, before I get into an advice.
That's okay.
I have to continue the story.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, because my son struggled academically. So I said, by the end of 2015, if he suffer a lot, like from what I have been doing in this responsibility and with my travel, I would quit. I would resign, and God will be able to find someone fitted to serve in this capacity. I pray to God so hard. I said, God, you have to take care. If you call me, you have to make sure that my kids are okay. They have to be able to survive. I just say that survive. I didn't even say thrive. But God answered my prayer more than I expected.
Amen.
Because my son, from his academic struggle that he had, even when I was with him, he thrived. So by the end of the year, his grade improved so much, and it was unbelievable. And then I said, God, you humble me again. This is impossible without your intervention. They became very responsible. They were so, mature, even though they were grade 4, grade 6. And they learned to cook their own food. They look at the YouTube. And now my daughter has become very good at baking because of YouTube. Anyway, thanks to YouTube. So, the call, my only advice is that believe when the call is placed on your shoulder. Believe that it's God's calling. Believe that He made the choice for you to serve at this time, and He will smoothen everything out. I truly believe. Of course, it's not because I deserve to be where I am or to receive, such a responsibility given by the church. It's not me, but it's Him who will perfect it. It's Him who will be able to take care of your parents who struggle with mirror image and suddenly, became good in study and become very responsible. It's not easy to change the mindset of a person, but God alone can help. God alone can work wonders and perform miracles.
So at the last GC session in 2022, you were called to serve here at the General Conference as our Children's Ministries Director. I'm wondering if in these final minutes here, if you could just share what is one thing that you would like our audience to know when it comes to children and our church, and from your experience from being a young person to understanding that faith for yourself, going to Spicer and having that faith just, come alive more, having an education background, working within our schools, and then working now around the world to help our young people. What is one thing that you would like our members to know as they work towards helping our young people have a relationship with Christ?
As soon as I came into this children ministry, we have to have a heart for children in order to serve them, in order to guide them to Jesus. And as we know, life is getting harder with challenges everywhere, wars and conflicts and political chaos. Children are abusers. Children are the silent victims. And we also think about special needs children. In many places, parents don't take their children to church because they don't want children to make noise or maybe disturb the ambience of worship at church. And sometimes other church members do not understand that children with special needs have some challenges. And so my heart goes out to such particular children at this point in time. I remember traveling to an island in Indonesia when there was a tsunami. And we visited a place where the school was wiped, out. And the school, the other school also was like, so badly destroyed and full of cracks along the walls that it was a condemned place for people to do any business there. So we visited children in a tent, and I learned about a little girl whose both parents, were swept away by the tsunami, leaving her alone. Such children are not only deserve to be cared for with the gospel message, but they also need to be provided with certain help and necessities. And I have to say that we are looking at the generations. We think about our lives when we were younger, that we suffer, a considerable amount, some kind of hardships. But our future generation is going to suffer much more. And the only hope that we can give to our children for them to survive or even thrive is the gospel truth. When there is nothing in their hands, they can still hope for something better. Hope for the miracles that God would intervene, for them to continue to live, purposeful life. And I think we really have to come together. It's not just children ministry that has to be responsible in caring for the younger generations, but for everyone to be involved. And I'm so thankful that there is a church. We just got a report from Amy Wissett. She shared with us a church where there's no children in a church, but the church member decided to reach out to the community and conducted VBS. And they have been doing it for years. And the church is just like an hour away from GC building. And so there's no excuse of us, not having children in church. We need to reach out into community and bringing children to Christ. We need to put together our efforts, more resources, more commitment, more dedication, so that our future can be certain, especially for children's life, and as well as our church, Seventh-day Adventist Church, to continue to have many more faithful members in the future. And it's my prayer that children ministry will be in your mind, in your thought, and your consideration when you think of supporting and the mission of the church. Let us join hands together for our future.
I love that. And as someone who was very involved with a lot of things children's ministries related when I was young, as well as a mother, I would also echo that we must surround our parents and our children and make every effort we can to come alongside them and support them. We hope you enjoyed this episode of ANN Profiles with my special guest, Orathai Chureson. If you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast or YouTube channel, wherever it is you're tuning in from today. We don't want you to miss any future episodes. Thank you for spending this time with me, and join me next week as I continue to get to know the life stories of more inspiring people.